Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you all. As leader of the Labour Party, or a leader of the Labour Party, of course, I'm very, very cautious in making any reference to Donald Trump in my address, but I do understand that his State of the Union speech earlier this week ran to 1 hour and 40 minutes. So, keen on international benchmarks as I am, settle in and make yourselves comfortable. Can I start by acknowledging Simon Bridges and the members of the Auckland Chamber and say thank you for having us here today. Like the beard, Simon, my experience of former political leaders growing beards is an interesting one, so we'll keep an eye on you. Right Honourable Helen Clark, thank you for being here too, Helen. Helen is leaving here shortly to go to her father George's 103rd birthday. So. Mayor Wayne Brown, thank you for being here. Brownie doesn't hesitate to give us regular feedback, and thank you for that. We're never going to die wondering what you think, Wayne. To all of our union and business leaders, my Deputy Carmel Sepoloni, and all of my Labour colleagues, thank you for taking the time to all be here today. Today I want to talk to you about the challenges and the opportunities that are ahead and set out the priorities for a new Labour government. After 18 months of chaos, broken promises, we need a stable government relentlessly focused on making New Zealand better for everyone. One that's driven forward by clear, focused objectives that works with people and businesses instead of talking them down. A government that will put the politics of division aside and bring people together to do what's right. A government that goes to work every single day to fight for you. That's the government that I want to lead. And today I'm going to tell you what that government will be focused on. Politics at its best changes lives. That's why I got into it. It lifts people up. It unites hope and action to build the future that we all want and that works for all of us. It doesn't ignore the big challenges that we face or blame someone else and then at the last minute come up with half-baked solutions that don't ultimately work. It focuses on real solutions, solutions that work, not just empty slogans. It reflects people's hopes, not the mess and division currently resident in the beehive. If we're going to make progress on the things that we care about, the things that really affect people's lives, then we need to be the antidote to that division. Last year, I was one of the tens of thousands of New Zealanders who came together to protect the promises woven into the fabric of Aotearoa New Zealand. The Toitū Treaty Hikoi showed beyond doubt the pride that we all have in who we are, that solving the challenges we face depends on us being able to listen to each other, including listening to people we disagree with. That we need to be able to see ourselves in each other and work to find common ground so that we can move forward together. Regardless of where we come from, what we look like, or what's in our bank account, we all have many of the same worries, the same hopes for ourselves and for our children, the same commitment to making this the best possible country that it can be. And that common ground needs to be the foundation for our journey ahead. One of the best parts of my job as a politician and leader of the opposition is that I get to travel around the country and I get to meet people from all walks of life. It's a real privilege to be welcomed into their lives and to have the time to understand their hopes and their concerns about the future. And there are normally two stories that they tell. The first, uplifting story is the story of ambition. The ambition that they've got for themselves, for their kids, and for their communities. Whether it's hearing about a successful local business, serving their local community, despite the Prime Minister's best efforts to talk them down, or the innovation and ingenuity that's happening all over the country. The ideas and entrepreneurship that are creating new opportunities to make life better for all of us. I see teachers working tirelessly to give our kids the education they deserve. The nurses going above and beyond to look after and care for our loved ones. the volunteers and community organisations doing things like restoring native wildlife, and those making sure their neighbours don't go hungry. But I also hear people's genuine and legitimate concern about what the future holds. That's the second story. Far too many people are worried about their kids or their grandkids leaving the country, leaving New Zealand behind, because they see their future better off elsewhere. They're concerned that once this government's finished selling everything off, there's nothing left to pass on to the next generation. I hear about the people sitting around the kitchen table, working their way through their bills, trying to make it all add up, and wondering how they are ever going to make a plan for the future. Because that's what the rising cost of living has done. It makes it harder for us to focus on what's ahead. It intrudes on the little things that we love. Taking the kids out for the day, a weekend trip to catch up with loved ones, picking up a Friday night treat at the supermarket, only then to put it back on the shelf. No matter how trivial or small politics seems sometimes, I know that the stakes for families and communities up and down New Zealand couldn't be bigger. Our schools and hospitals are run down. They are in desperate need of investment. Our homes are unaffordable. The cost of everything, from keeping the house warm to the weekly groceries, is too high. People's chance of success is more closely tied to what they inherit than what they earn through their own hard work. It would be easy for me to stand here today and blame everything on the present national government. Seems to be in vogue at the moment. But the reality is that many of the problems that we face go back a lot further than that, decades. For too long, we've looked for quick fixes as a country and easy answers rather than dealing with the big underlying problems. Some of the actions of this government are a case in point. Their choices have made many of our problems deeper, longer lasting, and more painful than they needed to be. The past 18 months has been more than enough time for Christopher Luxon to be clear to people why his government is there and what it wants to do. But what does New Zealand have to show for that so far? A country that's more divided than ever. A recession made worse by the choice to cut jobs and prioritise tax cuts. Cancelled ferries. Too many kids going hungry at school. I'm not going to go through the whole list. I haven't got the time. But doesn't it make it clear where this government's priorities actually are? Ask yourself this: is the country better now than it was 18 months ago? Are you better off now than you were 18 months ago? The government's turning New Zealand into a game that only a few people can afford to play. And the long-term costs are going to the long-term benefits are going to far outweigh the short-term costs. And what does it say about the so-called tough choices that Christopher Luxon has made over the last year and a half? What about the choice to prioritise tax cuts for landlords ahead of supporting the thousands of people all over New Zealand who spend all day on their feet struggling to earn enough to pay the bills? Brave, committed, hard-working people teaching our kids, caring for our loved ones, running businesses, cleaning our offices. It just cannot be right that with every passing month, their lives seem to get harder and harder, while those who are doing well amass ever greater wealth. Now, some of you, potentially many of you, in the audience may be landlords, and I can understand why that is. If you've got equity, buying investment properties has been a good way to make money. Government policy has encouraged you to do that. But I also encourage you to ask yourself a pretty fundamental question. What's more important? Capturing a greater share of the nation's limited residential property market, potentially shutting future generations out of the opportunity to own their own home, or investing in a growing, productive economy that can create good, well-paying jobs? What about the government's choice to reopen oil and gas drilling instead of seizing the opportunity to lower energy bills in New Zealand and create jobs by investing to upgrade homes and businesses to run on clean energy. Or their choice to cancel free prescriptions, to make it more expensive to catch the bus or the train, to cut jobs. Every government should be judged on the choices that they make. And in nearly every case, the choices that this government has made have made life harder for New Zealanders. 18 months ago, I wasn't expecting an incoming national government to keep in place every one of the changes made by Labour. But I think that, like most people, I did expect them to show some interest in doing what's right for the country, to acknowledge what was working, and to continue to invest in the places where it would make the biggest difference. Let's be clear, election campaigns highlight the things that we disagree on. New Zealand's recent history, though, has seen incoming governments build on the work of their predecessors rather than trying to turn the clock backwards to before their predecessors existed. That was until this one. Most New Zealanders understand that coalition government requires careful thought, compromise, and listening to people who you don't always agree with. But they also expect, as I do, that their government will reflect what people actually voted for. By allowing ACT and New Zealand First to call all the shots, Christopher Luxon has turned his back on many of the promises he himself made to New Zealanders. Devoid of ideas, unfocused, and too weak to confront the challenges we face today and set us up for tomorrow. Putting style over substance, messing around on social media rather than doing the job, reciting talking points over talking about ideas. That type of small politics just isn't enough, not when our shared future is at stake. I'll speak candidly. I'm not going to stand here today and ask you to give your support to the Labour Party so we can just go start the merry-go-round again. We can wind the clock back. We can cancel everything that they're doing, because that ultimately isn't going to drive New Zealand forward. We're not going to spend our first year back in government pausing, cancelling and reviewing everything. Just because the current government has started something, we're not going to stop it just because it was their idea, not ours. If it's working, we'll keep moving forward. We've got to stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater just to make a political point. Infrastructure projects shouldn't be stopped dead and contracts ripped up just because it was the other side that entered into them. The current government's decision to pause or cancel new state house builds, school upgrades, hospital rebuilds, transport projects and big infrastructure works contributed to a loss of over 13,000 jobs in building and construction, right at a time when the country needs that the most. We will not repeat that mistake. No more games, no more broken promises, no more gutting the things that will actually help New Zealand to grow. Instead, I want to ask you to support a new way of doing things, an approach built on collaboration, where we work with people, with communities, with businesses, experts, unions, all of us working together to achieve a clear set of shared goals. A government setting the direction and seeing its role as creating the space for innovation and for creativity, finding new ways of working together to meet the challenges that we face. We will lead a government of action, but one that gets all of us working together for change. People action that changes lives for the better. And the current government, frankly, is not strong enough or united enough to deliver that. Labour's always led governments of change, introducing KiwiSaver, the New Zealand Super Fund, Kiwi Bank. The long list could go on. Those changes helped New Zealand to grow and to prosper, and our next government will build on that. Today I'm signalling that we intend to make changes in government that will put New Zealand on a solid, sustainable and sound footing for the future. When I look across the Tasman at why our young people might be attracted to move to Australia, and a lot of them are, I see an economy with high savings rates, large domestic pools of capital, research and development incentives, and yes, a tax system that encourages investment in local businesses and new jobs, not just homes. I see an economy that views growing wages and better working conditions as a sign of success, not a constraint. I see a public sector that pays its doctors, its nurses, its teachers, its police, and its other public servants more because it sees it as an investment, not wasteful spending. You can expect the next Labour government to move New Zealand in that same direction. Our next government will be focused on 3 goals, each one targeted on issues that matter most to all Kiwis. And it starts with an economy that works for everyone. We want to raise living standards and boost incomes across New Zealand so that people have got more money to pay the bills, put food on the table, or buy new shoes and warm clothes for their kids. We'll support our innovators and entrepreneurs and remove barriers that make residential property investment more profitable than investing in Kiwi businesses. We'll embrace new technology and the opportunities of clean, renewable energy. Lower power bills due to a rapid uptake of renewable energy, including exciting new opportunities in solar and geothermal. And don't get me started on supercritical geothermal, which I think could be one of the most exciting opportunities ahead for New Zealand. These things can help Kiwi businesses lower their costs and be more internationally competitive. New Zealand's got a proven track record of innovation. Think about foiling yachts, jet boats, electric fences, rockets, clever animation, humidified respiration and electromagnets, to name just a few. Science, innovation and creativity must help drive our economy forward and create jobs, boost incomes and lower costs for everybody. We need to build an economy that ends the reliance on trickle-down and instead grows from the local community out, where an idea that starts around a kitchen table or in a garage can be turned into a new business, where prosperity is built from the contribution of every person, every community, every region. I'm not interested in an economy where one part of the country races ahead of the rest, and nor will I accept the growth that depends on jobs that are low paid and insecure. I want the benefits of a prosperous, thriving economy to be felt on every farm, at every kitchen table, at every rugby club, and at every family barbecue. Meaningful, secure jobs in every part of the country that pay enough to cover life's essentials like good food and a warm home. And when I say a warm home, I also mean one that's affordable to live in. Which leads me to the second of our national goals, for everyone to have a safe, healthy and affordable place that they can call home. Labour will get New Zealand building again. More warm, dry, affordable homes in places where people want to live. We'll work with local councils and local communities, taking a long-term view of our housing requirements, so we can invest in land now and start building the services needed like schools, drinking water and reliable roads and public transport. Opportunities for first home buyers in every community. And for the 1.5 million New Zealanders who rent, we'll support you to make your rented property a home, a place that's warm and safe where you can put down roots and be part of the local community. Because a home is the very foundation of our health and our well-being. But when it matters, I also want people to be able to access the quality health care that they need, which is the third goal, a quality public health system where everyone can access the care that they need when they need it, where prevention comes first and where care is closer to home. We must finally, as a country, end the postcode lottery so that the quality of care that you or your loved ones receive doesn't depend on where you live. We need to make it easier and quicker for people to see a doctor. I want to know that no matter what happens, people, Kiwis and their loved ones, will be well looked after. So we'll also make it a priority to ensure that our nurses and our healthcare workers are properly valued and paid what they deserve. And we'll support kaupapa Māori and Pasifika approaches to care so that everyone can be cared for equally. This is our plan. A fair economy with secure jobs that pay a decent wage, healthcare that you can rely on, and a warm home you can afford to make your own with a great school down the road for your kids. In short, in 3 words, jobs, health and homes. We know that the government cannot deliver these things alone. We must work in partnership with people and businesses and communities up and down New Zealand. Government setting the direction, but with every step of the journey taken together. So today, as well as setting out those core priorities for our next Labour-led government, I'm announcing the team that's going to take that forward. Labour will have a refreshed economic team led by Barbara Edmonds. Barbara is well known to many of you in the room. She's going to keep doing the great work that she's already started with an expanded finance and economy portfolio, but she'll also be adding to that a new savings and investment portfolio. I've tasked Barbara with making sure we're ready to balance the books, increase our savings, expand the opportunities that we have to invest in ourselves, and create the economic conditions for all Kiwis to thrive. As part of our work to build an economy that works for everyone, we'll make quality, meaningful, well-paid jobs that get Kiwis back into work a key focus. And Ginny Anderson will be taking on a new portfolio of jobs and incomes. Ruben Davidson joins the economic team with science, innovation and technology alongside a new broadcasting, media and the creative economy portfolio. Pini Henere picks up economic development and Kushla Tangaire Manuel a focus on the Māori economy. All of our MPs will be working together with our energy, infrastructure, manufacturing and industry spokespeople on an economic plan that will put New Zealand on a solid, sustainable and sound footing for the future. Simply inviting cash from offshore is not an economic strategy. Our own people need the tools to innovate, to create and to thrive, and it will be the next Labour government that makes that happen. An economy that delivers for all New Zealanders needs public investment. We've run down our infrastructure and sold off many of the public assets built up and passed down to us by previous generations. Our next government will be one of rebuilding. Kieran McAnulty will be picking up a new portfolio of public investment and infrastructure, alongside his existing work in housing, and he'll be supported by Tange Utakiri, who will work alongside him in transport, local government and small business. It pays to stick with a team that's working, and Aisha Vera will be keep on doing the excellent work that she is doing in health. Willow Jean Prime adds education to her existing work around children, and I've tasked her with making sure that every Kiwi kid gets the very best possible start in life. And Willie Jackson, who a whole country recognises has been a lifelong advocate for the underdog, picks up the social development portfolio. I know that Auckland's success will be New Zealand's success. That's why I have asked my deputy, Carmel Sepuloni, to take on the Auckland Issues portfolio and make that her major focus. Carmel has a lot of energy, extensive relationships around Auckland, and I know that working together we can ensure that Auckland will thrive. And Mayor Wayne Brown, yes, I can tell you that the manifesto you released for Auckland just before the last election provides a lot of common ground that we can work together on, and that does include devolving more back here to the local level in Auckland. And thank you. It's an encouraging start. In the coming weeks and months, the new Labour team that I've announced today will be supporting me to deliver the goals that I've set out. Meeting with communities, talking to experts, listening to businesses, and gathering ideas from Kiwis. You can expect more policy announcements for us this year, not just in the weeks leading up to Election Day. We've heard that. Our policy packages will work with the three priorities that I've announced today: jobs, health, and homes. We want to work with you as we finalise that policy, not just tell you how it's going to be, and that's what the team that I've announced today is all going to be focused on. We'll do this because we know that we have a shared goal of building a better New Zealand together. In these polarising times, as we look on the news every night and people feel overwhelmed and despondent about what's happening around the world, it has never been more important to send the message that we will be stronger when we work together. To create a future where our kids see a good life for themselves in the places where they grow up, with schools down the road and doctor surgeries and hospitals nearby, where the doctors and nurses that look after you aren't burnt out. A future where nobody's opportunities in life are limited by where they're born or who their parents are. A future where businesses, large and small, are supported to thrive and grow, creating well-paid jobs that cover the essentials and leave enough for people to enjoy the little things in life. Where the decisions that we make about how to confront climate change make life better for all New Zealanders, help to lower our bills, and create opportunities for well-paid work in communities all over New Zealand. That future is within reach. Whether or not we make that happen will depend entirely on the choices that we make together. So let's get to work. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Hey, well, great stuff, Chris. There's a lot of food for thought there. Let's start with the hard, serious stuff. You mentioned my Cunliffe-esque beard. I understand you had a gentle ginger number over the summer, but you chicken out, did you?
I did shave before coming back to work, you're correct.
Look, one from me, and then we will go open. I didn't think I would, but I got a lot there that we could get through if everyone's shy in the audience. But I think one of the themes today is it is a very polarised time. And you talked about listening, to those we don't necessarily agree with. Give us just a little more on that. What's the solution? What would your style be in government again?
I'll start with a general observation first and then move to the specifics of your question. I get asked about polarisation an awful lot. And if you're like me and you've travelled to the United States a lot over the last 20 years, you can feel the change in the community there, where people with different political views just don't interact with each other anymore. You have very polarised, you're either red or you're blue, and if you're blue, you don't talk to the red, and if you're red, you don't talk to the blue. We don't have that in New Zealand. And people say, how can we avoid that in New Zealand? And the answer is actually really simple. Continue to talk to the members of your family and the people in your community who have a different view about politics to the one that you do. Because when you stop doing that, that's where polarisation really sets in. And so, coming to your specific question, Simon, when I, as a minister, particularly during the time that I was minister for COVID-19, I would come to Auckland regularly and meet with business leaders because there was so much going on and so many challenges we had to navigate our way through. But when we sat around a table at lunchtime, the stuff that we agreed on was far more numerous than the issues that we disagreed on. As a Minister of Education, I'd sit around a table with business leaders and they wanted to talk to me about their views on how their kids were doing at school. We all share these same goals, these same objectives about how we can actually make New Zealand a thriving and prosperous country. And speaking directly to that, I think, I'm aware that there's a lot of business people here in the audience today. I'm aware that there's a real suspicion of Labour governments from the business community quite often. And my impressions from the conversations that I've had with business leaders is a lot more of that is imagined than real. Because when we actually talk to each other openly, the common ground's not hard to find.
Great stuff. I'm brimming with questions. I'm going to exercise my editor's right to intersperse the world according to Simon when I feel like it. But let's open it up. I think we do have a roving mic. But feel free to use your big voice if you'd like. Don't be shy. Yeah, I see one down the back there.
Thank you for cutting directly to the chase, Sam. You will see more. I've signalled savings and investment as being a key area that you will expect to see more from us sooner rather than later on. I think when I look at Helen's government and the work that Helen and Michael Cullen did, I think KiwiSaver is one of the great legacies of that government. But when I compare where New Zealand is at with our rate of savings through things like KiwiSaver, with Australia, who made similar decisions back in the 1980s and steadily built on that since then, they're much further ahead than we are here in New Zealand. And if we really want to get serious about savings and investment, we are going to need to do more there. I would love, and you and I have had this conversation, to see us create as a country more opportunities for KiwiSaver funds to be investing here in New Zealand rather than investing offshore. I accept as in a balanced portfolio you need to do both, but actually even tilting just a segment of that KiwiSaver money that's currently invested offshore back into domestic investment, the economic opportunities that will flow from that could be very significant. So that's a really good example of where I think working together to make sure we create those opportunities could be huge for New Zealand. It can create good, well-paying jobs. And the idea that people doing those jobs are contributing to their own retirement savings at the same time, I think is such a compelling and exciting opportunity for us.
Let's just stick with that for a second. I thought one of the intriguing things you announced was Kieran McAnulty investment portfolio.
Yeah, public investment, yeah.
And I take it that would include that sort of thing? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, I think if you look at schools, hospitals, housing, it's not just infrastructure that we need significant, we need to significantly up our game in. We've got a big sort of social investment portfolio that we need to tend to as well. When I became Minister of Education 7 years ago now, I was given a forecast that said in the next 10 years we needed to accommodate 100,000 more kids in our schools, and not only had we not made a start, we were actually behind in doing that. So we had kids in hallways and libraries and stuff because our schools were overcrowded. Now we took a decent chunk out of that. I think we got up to about nearly 60,000 additional places that we had created or were under construction when we left government. But we've got to keep driving forward with that. If you look at think about the population growth, you think about the last 2 million people that we added to the New Zealand population. Did we add 2 million more people's worth of capacity to our hospitals? The answer to that's going to be a no. And so that's an area where we need more public investment.
I suppose one thing I take you up on, that, as I understand and I disclosed to you, I don't know where the Parliament's sitting. I don't watch it anymore. As I also said, just because I'm not there anymore. So why would I? I mean, it's just, but one thing I've picked up is, pretty trenchant, I think, opposition to asset sales from the Labour Party. I mean, the thing I would say, and I can understand and respect that, is surely if you're recycling it into other things that take things forward, whether it's a hospital or a road, there are some reasonable arguments for it.
Yeah. So I think you'll find the Labour Party's concern about asset sales is because that's not our history as a country. Over the last 30 or 40 years, asset sales haven't been recycled. We've actually seen the New Zealand share of public wealth diminish. Asset sales have been used to fund the fact that we've been living beyond our means rather than actually used to continue to build up assets for the future. So creating public investment as a portfolio is a sign that, yes, we do think we can do a better job of managing the assets we have now and that we can grow the asset base that we have now. But that's got to be the objective, not simply selling it off because we're living beyond our means and we don't know how to pay for the things that we're committing to do today.
Great stuff. I see Richard over here. They worried me every month, Richard. I put on my boots and my hard hat.
Thanks, Richard. If you go back to the time that I was Minister of Education, in the vocational education area, one of the policies that I'm most proud of was the apprenticeship boost. because as we headed into COVID, we knew that apprentices were likely to be the first people to be laid off if there was an economic downturn, because that's been our recent history. And then what we find is as the economy bounces back and recovers, we're suddenly short of tradespeople because we've stopped training them. The apprenticeship boost stopped that. We actually kept record high levels of people in apprenticeships through that, really volatile period. And so I think the potential for government to do more of that is actually, and whether it's apprenticeship boost or other active labour market approaches, I think it gives us the opportunity to say, regardless of where the economic cycle's at, we've got to invest in training the workers that we need for the future. And we're desperately short of tradespeople at the moment. And yes, you can supplement the shortage by bringing people in from abroad, but we should really do a much better job of training our own. And if I could just make an observation on the joke that you made with Simon, business and unions working together actually has the opportunity to be really positive for the businesses concerned. I've yet to encounter any workers who go to work on a daily basis hoping that their business that they work for is going to go broke. In fact, they have the opposite ambition. They want the business to be successful because it means they're going to have more job security and they're going to get paid more. And there are some fantastic examples, and you and I, as we were walking in, we're talking about the ports of Auckland, of where business and worker representatives can work together to make the business more efficient, more profitable, and safer, and a better place to work. And if we embrace that kind of approach, partnership, working together, it's going to be better for business, and it's going to be better for the people who work in the business.
Very good. I saw a question over here.
Yeah, thank you. Look, in my lifetime, I've felt like New Zealand has actually strived under successive governments of all different political persuasions to meld a multicultural, accepting, welcoming, united, tolerant, respectful society. And it feels like it's just only in the last few years that has changed. I think about Te Treaty, for example. Actually, I think the key government, particularly with some of the stuff that Christopher Finlayson did, should be incredibly proud of a lot of the work that they did in that area. Some of the things that co-governance, type things that we were doing, actually were just building on work that they had already had underway. And I think the knee-jerk response that we've saw from the political leadership of the current government, I think has really set the dial back on a lot of that. And it is disruptive and it's unnecessary. I think New Zealanders are a very tolerant and inclusive society, but I think the tone that you set from the top actually does influence the tone that gets adopted by the rest of the population. So I think us setting a more inclusive tone as political leaders will actually change the way New Zealanders interact with each other, because we know that from our past history.
Great stuff. I see one down here.
I mean, first of all, I think local government have to undertake far more rigorous long-term planning around infrastructure than central government does. And they have to be a lot more transparent about that. Local government's major constraint is how they pay for it, because the central government determines where they can get their money from, and frankly, central government's not allowing them to raise enough money through a variety of different sources to actually pay for what their long-term plans say is required. I don't think we need any more analysis to show us that that's one of the major problems that local government faces, is that central government isn't giving them the tools they need to finance what they need to do. I think in terms of New Zealand's long-term infrastructure, Current government are making soundings about a more bipartisan approach to that, which we are very open to. I think it wouldn't sound more sincere from the current government had they not cancelled everything that the previous government were doing beforehand. I do think we've got to stop this cycle where every new government, the cycle that this government have largely started, accepting that it's always happened to a degree when there's a change of government, but this government have done it far more than any other previous change of government. You can't just start everything every time there's a change of government. There has to be continuity. When I became Minister of Education, I continued every school rebuilding project that was started by my predecessors and started some more new ones. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to stop that one and start this one over here instead, because all you do is grind everything to a halt when you do that.
I think business will be really pleased to hear that. I see one right down the back there.
Thank you, Simon. Chris, we heard one of Labour Party's goal is innovation, and for a small Kiwi land here, we're well known for our innovative skills, and that's one area that hasn't been exploited as well as it should. What plans or policies Labour Party has to encourage innovators or entrepreneurs?
I actually think I took the time to read Peter Gluckman's recent review of science, and the current government have picked up only a fraction of the recommendations in that review. There's actually some other really exciting recommendations in that review that I think we do need to look at as a country, because investment in science has got to be a really important part of our innovation future. One of the things that it says, for example, is that we need some greater bipartisan agreement about our goals for investment in science. I'm waiting for the phone call from the government to talk about that, because I think it's a good idea. I think we'll get more if we actually map out a longer-term vision for what we want out of science in New Zealand. And it can't just be about funding things that have an immediate commercial return. Bearing in mind some of the most profitable science innovations that the world has ever discovered have been a byproduct of trying to find something else. So we've got to allow space for science for the sake of science, because that's where you kind of create opportunities to unleash innovation. A lot of the answers rest with business, but a lot of the answers also rest with what I was talking about in my speech, which is a clear sense of purpose. So let's take an example, and my staff told me I wasn't allowed to talk about this because they said it's too technical and jargonistic, but supercritical geothermal, which is basically the energy that's deep down in the earth underneath us, could be transformative for New Zealand, because if we can get that far down and we can tap into that, then we've got an unlimited supply of environmentally friendly renewable energy. And New Zealand already does geothermal better than most other countries in the world. So getting into the deep geothermal could be massive for New Zealand, but it's going to take business, science, government, everyone working together to harness the technology to make that happen. I reckon we should be the first country in the world to get supercritical geothermal to commercial production, making electricity, cheap electricity, that gives New Zealand a source of competitive advantage. So that's the sort of approach. That's just one, but we should be doing that. We should be looking for those examples across the board.
And just to follow up on that, Chris, you know that energy's been a drum I've been banging at the Chamber, because, it seems to me for business and, all New Zealand is a real crisis, actually. We just don't have the abundant, affordable supply of energy we need. You mentioned that, and look, that's one of the recommendations we have at the Chamber. But give us a little, without, I appreciate you might save an energy speech for an energy speech one time, but give us a little bit more on energy at a high level in a policy sense, what you'd be about.
So, I read the Chamber's recent report, and I thought there's a lot of common ground in there for us to move forward on together. We've got to look at how competitive our electricity market is at the moment. The fact that post-privatisation we went through a trough where the major generating companies stopped investing in building more renewable energy and took billions of dollars of dividends out of the system. We've actually got to look at how, what failed in the market that allowed that to happen, to the point where we just don't have the generating capacity that we need right now. So I think, and the Chamber's highlighted that, and I totally agree that we've got to look at the competitiveness of the market, supercritical geothermal, but also there's other much faster things that we can bring into the market. Solar power panels. Solar panels have never been cheaper. They're in abundant supply at the moment. we've got to really encourage greater uptake of that. Solar has the advantage that it reduces the need for transmission. Transmission's expensive. Transmission's one of the major reasons why power bills are going up at the moment, and a lot more solar, particularly in the upper half of the North Island, where we produce a lot of electricity in the South Island and then we bring it up to the North Island. A whole lot more solar in the upper North Island could really help to even out some of that demand on the transmission system.
We've got about precisely 10 minutes left, and I just want to make sure we do use it, because I think it's important we give the alternative Prime Minister a grilling. I see you, Richard, down there, and then I see one over there.
Kia ora. Richard Hill's one of the Auckland councillors and also the chair of the Policy and Planning Committee. I want to say thanks to hear you want to delegate more to local government, but in this role it feels like the last government and this government are just constantly in churn with us having to react all the time, and a lot of the time we don't feel like trusted to actually do what we need to do. So I want to know, A, how you'll just maybe give us some money so we can actually act on our own priorities, but also how we can work together. Auckland is essentially like a state government in Australia, but we just don't have the funding tools to be building the infrastructure we need, etc., etc. Yeah, so just, I guess, how you're going to actually give us that empowerment.
Yeah. So I welcome the recent discussion about things like regional and city deals, because I think central and local government are going to have to partner together to fund some of those big infrastructure investments that are required, and I think Auckland should absolutely be the first, the top of the list for that kind of approach. I can guarantee you we'll let you set your own parking fines. So there you go, Wayne, that's one of the first things that you could tick off the list. But I think we do have to look at the fact that rates alone are not a sustainable way to fund everything that we're asking local government to do.
I've been contributing a bit to those stupid parking fines lately. One over here, I think.
Yeah, the late Sir Paul Callaghan was a passionate advocate for critically looking at the structure of our export economy, and to remove the reliance, the over-reliance, he argued, on milk powder, logs, fish, wine, primary industries, which remain critical. But do you agree that we need to look at that to fundamentally restructure our export outlook? And how would your future government do that? You've talked a little bit about science and innovation, but how does that actually fundamentally restructure what it is that we take to markets on the other side of the world? Because one of our fundamental problems is that we're a long way from the shops, and heavy things like logs cost too much to get there. So intellectual property that we can export surely is part of our future.
I totally agree with that. I read Paul Callaghan's books again just recently to remind myself of the ideas that he was talking about. Commodity-based exporting for New Zealand is still a very critical part of our economy, and there is still huge, opportunity for us to do what we've been talking about for the last several decades and move from volume to value. We can actually add value to our commodity exports and extract more for New Zealand business and more for New Zealand workers in the process of doing that. But even that's not going to be enough. We have to grow other parts of our economy. The weightless economy, the creative economy, these are huge opportunities for New Zealand. I'm actually open to the idea of, the digital nomads working from New Zealand. I think that that's got opportunity for us, and we've actually been broadly supportive of what the government have been talking about in that space. The creative economy, you noted that I mentioned that several times in my speech. That could be huge for New Zealand. You think about what we do with digital, for example, now around film and television. Extend that to the gaming sector, which is a multi-trillion-dollar industry around the world. Huge opportunity for New Zealand in that, because you can do that from anywhere in the world, and we've got some of the greatest creatives in that area that we could build from. So I think one of the challenges is there's always this idea of should we pick winners or should we not pick winners. I think we should form coalitions of the willing, building on the existing strengths that we've got and saying, how do we drive that faster and really kind of extract more value from it.
I agree with that. Chris, question really, if we just continue on that theme of growing our country's income, you talked, and I'm sure we all at a high level agree, it's not right that people who work hard aren't doing as well as those who've just inherited it. You also said, though, and I think there's something in it, that, for a lot of business people in an abstract sense, they worry about a Labour Party and government. Capital gains tax, it's a taboo. I think personally I've come to the position I can see some very strong arguments for it if it was accompanied with a switch into something like a significant company tax rate or the like. So you're moving out of that non-productive housing area into things that are going to grow our economy and the jobs that you talk about. Again, I know you're not going to announce anything today, but do you love everything I've said?
I always love sharing a stage with you, Simon. No, I'm not going to announce our tax policy today, just to be clear. But I think what you saw me signalling in there is, we do need to see a shift in the way we think about tax. The industry transformation plans, they've unfortunately been scrapped by the current government, but tax was one of the areas that they highlighted, things like accelerated depreciation. There were some things in there that actually came with a reasonable price tag, and a lot of that work had been done when I became Prime Minister, and then in the short 8 months that I had in the job, we were grappling with how would we pay for that. And so we do need to think about shifting the tax burden in order to be able to encourage that productive investment that we want. We're not going to get rich as a country by buying and selling houses from one another. And so we've really, we just have to have an honest conversation about that as a country. We've got to invest in productive businesses. We've got to invest in things that create jobs. Building new houses creates jobs in the short term, but what then happens? Where do people work after the new houses have been built? That's not a sustainable way of growing our economy. Again, coming back to just looking at those fundamental challenges facing the country, we've relied a lot on population growth and people working longer hours to grow our economy over the last few decades. That's not a sustainable way of growing our economy either.
We'll take just a couple more from the audience. I think I saw one here and then one there. Yes, sir.
Thank you. We have very low turnout, so I would just wonder if, to shift some of the questioning away from high-level policy. I'm a first-year uni student. All of that goes over my head. I didn't understand it. So how do we, as people here, translate everything that we just said into something that will get people excited to turn out and vote?
Thank you. That's a fantastic question. And I've thought a lot about why is it that young people are disengaging from the political process, and not just here in New Zealand, but why is it around the world that younger voters are more ambivalent towards democracy now than they've been at any point in the last 80 or so years. That's a huge challenge for us, and we all need to think really carefully about that. And the big challenges that I've set out in my speech and in this question and answer we've been having today are one of the reasons for that. If young people feel like we're ignoring the major issues of the future like climate change, they feel like they're never going to have a chance of owning their own home and a stake in the future. They feel like that even the education that they're getting isn't relevant to the future that they're going to have and the jobs that they're going to go into. That they're being asked to work really long hours and not be able to get ahead as a result of that, not get decent pay for that. Those things actually just involve people losing faith and switching off. Tackling those things and providing young people with the sense that there is a better way of doing things is actually how I think we will restore that faith in democracy as the way of delivering it. Because if we don't do that, you only need to look at what's happening around the rest of the world to see where that inevitably ends. It results in young people. A lot of young people, I'm not allowed to mention that person, but a lot of young people have been voting for authoritarian leaders. And if we don't want that to happen, we've got to provide them with a credible alternative.
Great stuff. And there's a final one down here.
Raz, I'm the president of New Zealand Nepal Chamber of Commerce. We are a growing business community in New Zealand. What different would small business owners like myself see in your next government? Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the number one things we've got to do is we've actually got to get the economy moving again so that businesses aren't still being squeezed. It's a complex question, but let me answer it by saying if you start laying people off and if you create huge uncertainty around people's employment, which is what this government have done, they stop spending money. And small businesses feel that faster than most other businesses do, particularly if you're in retail, hospitality and so on. People talk about the fact that in Wellington, I'm in Auckland here today, but in Wellington, businesses are saying, no one's spending any money. Well, if all those people who work in the public service across Wellington don't know whether they're going to have a job next week, they're not going to be out there spending any money. So providing stability and certainty and a sense that actually there is a future for everybody is one of the ways that we restore confidence, which will be good for all businesses at all levels. And at the moment, people don't have that confidence. Normally, when there's a change of government, there's a flip in attitude. People feel like things are going back in the right direction again. For the first time ever, it seems like the gap in terms of people thinking the country's heading in the wrong direction is getting bigger now than it was 18 months ago. We have to change that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think you've been treated to a good discussion on some really important issues for our country, and I just want to thank you for coming. I said it's precisely midday, and it's precisely midday. Please give Chris Hipkins a round of applause for that.
Thanks, everybody.